Today I have a special guest, and it's my handsome husband, Derek. I'm so excited for today's video. Today we are going to be sharing about the things that we've learned in our first year of marriage. So we have been married now for a year, and
it'll be a year and 7 months on Christmas Day.
Yeah, so a year and 7 months.
Yes.
And if you're married, you know you learn a lot about a person when you are married to them, especially after 1 year of marriage. And so today we just thought we would share things that we have learned about marriage, life, each other in our first year of marriage. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to say, if anyone has any questions for us, whether it be about us individually, our marriage, our relationship, whatever, please leave them in the comments below, because we will be doing a question video. So please go ahead and do that. So, do you want to get started?
Let's do it. All right, so like she said, obviously after 1 year, and especially 2020, you learn a lot about marriage. You learn a lot. It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like a fast track, condensed class, you know, everything, one of those incubators. Anyways, so the first thing that I really learned in marriage, especially at the dinner table when we have to make food at home and eat in, is as a married couple, you have to share your food. And I don't know how many of you guys are Friends fans, but to quote the Joey Tribbiani is, "Joey doesn't share his food."
Okay, but let's just pause for a second, because here's the thing. He does not share his food. It's the wife that shares her food.
Okay, let me correct myself. I begrudgingly, when I have a delicious morsel on my plate, I'll say, "Babe, do you want a bite?" And I'm in my head, I'm just like, please, come on, don't say yes. And then she'll say yes, and it's like, okay.
Where for me, I'll be eating this like delicious meal and it's just so good, and in my mind I'm thinking like, please don't ask me for a bite of this because I want it all to myself. And he just gets these eyes that just stares right at my plate. Then he'll like look up slowly at me, do like puppy dog eyes, and I'm just like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm not paying attention to you. I pretend I don't know what he's doing. And then he'll like continue doing it and making it so obvious that yes, this face right here, that's it. That's the face. And so I think it's more so you take my food, and I have to share my food.
I can no longer eat 2 persons worth of food. I have to only eat like 1.5 persons. So that's kind of like sharing. Okay, anyways, what have you learned?
Okay, so my first thing that I think we've learned in our first year of marriage would be, okay, this is something that you know already, like you know before getting married, but it really, you really see it once you're actually married, and that is that marriage is a spiritual thing. So of course you know that, like you're getting married, you know, it's you, your spouse, and it's Jesus. But when you are actually married, I know this is something we've learned in the past year, it's become so real to us. In that, you know, I remember at one day we were talking about it, and we had said to each other, you know, we were kind of blown away. It's almost like, you know, we had gotten married, we said our vows in front of our family and friends, we signed the papers, all that, and we're married, but there literally is something spiritual that happens in the spiritual realm when you get married. And that is, we knew that literally from the day that we got married. We sensed it. I remember talking about it like on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
How something just felt different, and we knew that it was a God thing. And so throughout this first year of marriage, I think that's definitely something that I've learned, we've learned, and have experienced it. We've experienced the aspect of marriage that it is a spiritual thing.
Well, like, you hear about it, and I know you hear about that so often. When you hear about marriage, you talk about it in, you know, youth, young adult, you know, you hear about that. But the truth is, it becomes real when you get married and you realize suddenly you're complementing each other, not just as, you know, with your skills, your strengths, your weaknesses, but also with your spiritual giftings. And that was a neat thing to realize. I hope I'm not stealing from your...
You totally just stole my next one.
Oops. Kind of like the breakfast table.
Yes.
So for me, another, probably, let me tell you the worst piece of advice, you know, this is just in my opinion, is don't go to bed angry. And I know that's from the verse that says, you know, don't let the sun set on your wrath. And honestly, that is a great verse, debatable on the context, but that's just my own opinion. But I've found that has actually overextended our bedtimes, and honestly, it's a great heuristic, it's a great general rule to live by, but cut yourself some grace sometimes and realize that not everything's gonna be solved that night. And I mean, especially in the first few months of marriage where you're really kind of getting the hang of living with somebody who there's somebody else there. Somebody who you love, but who also smells sometimes and, you know, I don't know, kicks you in the bed or something. And, and so, I hope I didn't go
Steals your food.
off script too much. No, cut yourself some grace. And if you start, you're gonna get frustrated, and sometimes you're gonna get frustrated at 10 p.m. and sometimes you're gonna have to get up for work the next day at 7 a.m. And honestly, you're not thinking clearly at 10 p.m. You don't need to solve what seems like an earth-shattering issue at 10, 11, 12 p.m. and then be up and, you know, you're finally coming around just because you're exhausted at 2 a.m. and you're like, yeah, we still love each other, but you still loved each other even if you're a little bit frustrated.
I wish that is something that we learned in our first, like, 6 months of marriage. It's taken us a year, but in our first 6 months of marriage and living with each other, like he said, and, you know, someone else being in your space, of course there's going to be little arguments and whatnot, and sometimes those happen late at night when we're getting ready to get to bed, and I wish that we had known that then, because it's so funny. Every single bridal shower that I've ever attended in my entire life, when they do the game where everyone has to give advice to the bride, the main one is never go to bed angry. So we both have lived our lives thinking, okay, do not go to bed angry. So if we get in an argument, this has to be settled. We have to go deep into the meaning of life to figure this out before we go to bed, when you don't need to. Because at the end of the day, we know that we love each other.
Well, half the time, the disagreements are caused because you're exhausted, because you're tired. And so solving them when you're even more exhausted, even more tired, you know, the first time I heard that was actually not the greatest advice, you were
blown away.
I was blown away. Yeah. I'm in a class and at school, and there's a few people who've been married longer than us in my class, and they all said, you know, this is the worst marriage advice we've ever been given. And suddenly it hit me like a ton of bricks, you know. You know, okay, it's okay to go to bed a bit frustrated. No, generally don't. You know, it's no fun going to bed. But yeah, no, cut yourselves some slack sometimes. And if you have to, you know, put it on the plate for tomorrow.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the most... I'm gonna cry. One of the most beautiful things about marriage is that you get to learn this stuff. Like, you get to walk through life with someone and learn this. Like... marriage, I will say, marriage is the most beautiful, incredible thing ever. Go get you some.
Okay, I think it's your turn, isn't it?
Turn?
Okay.
Yeah. So, my next thing, which he kind of stole from me, was going into the spiritual gifts. So, when we got married, you know our love story. You know, God brought us together. It was so clear to see that. Clearly, God had plans and has had plans forever while we were in our mother's womb for us and for our marriage. And, you know, we believe that God brought us together for a calling, and brought us together for His glory. And so, you know, we always knew that. And we always knew that clearly we'd be in ministry, working together, ministering together. But I don't think we really knew how that would look.
No.
Like, we had passions in our hearts to do different things that were similar.
Well,
but,
we both had the same words, like, spoken over our lives.
yeah, since we were kids.
Like
word for word.
which is another, you know, we'll talk
Another
more
video.
about that another time. Yeah.
But yeah, so we've had, like, we knew basically, you know, what we would do together, but we weren't really sure how it would work.
No.
And so since being married, I think one thing we have learned is how our spiritual gifts complement each other. And I remember the moment that this sort of like hit us, because I think like we've known it, we've been learning it over the past year, but we did have a moment where it was just like light bulb moment, where we had been talking about, you know, our different views on things, and God really showed us like in a moment how what my view of things and his view of things complement each other.
Yeah.
And how things that I don't have, he has.
Yeah.
And we never really, it's so funny because we didn't see that when we got married. Like, we didn't know these things, but we have learned in the last year of marriage that we can clearly see those things now. And now we can see them working together, and that it's almost like two puzzle pieces that belong together are now fitting so well.
Well, it's unique because what we've noticed is actually when we've been given opportunity to sort of minister or sort of, you know, step out into ministering, I'll be called into areas where I'm not as strong, but she's strong, and she'll actually be called to think and work in areas that I'm strong, but she's weaker on it. So it's this really cool thing when we're actually, and that necessitates the support and reliance upon the other person. And that's been a real cool thing that we've just been really coming to learn and realize, like now, is that, you know, sometimes I'm actually working in area. I seem to find myself in places where I need her strength and I need her encouragement and her actual intuition. She's called to areas where she kind of needs, you know, situations where she needs my intuition. It's really, really cool because that, you know, we kind of reflected on a walk the other day and we're like, neat.
So the moral of the story is that God knows. He knows.
Now, I had one or two more points.
Okay.
One is for all you Seinfeld fans out there. Do you remember the episode where Jerry's, you know, sort of lost in thought, about to cross the road, and he almost gets hit by a car, and this girl saves him, and they get talking. It turns out she's exactly like him. She's girl Jerry, and he, you know, muses to his friend Kramer. He's like, you know, I know what I've been missing. All my life I've been looking for myself, and I've come along and I've swept myself off my feet. And then you go through the episode, and by the end he's like, I realized something. I hate myself. I don't want to be with myself. And so, you know, all my life I'd been, you know, looking for myself. And all of a sudden, you know, I meet Terry Lynn, and she is opposite, like we said, in so many ways, in her strengths and her weaknesses. And sometimes it drives me absolutely bonkers. We're complete opposite. Our strengths, our weaknesses, everything. And it drives me completely bonkers. But then I remember how much I can't stand myself sometimes. And it's like, thank you, God, for bringing someone along who is my jigsaw puzzle piece. And, you know, initially that has led to a lot of frustrations as I'm dealing with someone who is completely the opposite of me in every single way, and I catch myself, and she catches me too, trying to force her into this box where she's a lot like me, and then I realize how annoying I am sometimes. And I've learned that to you know, kind of step outside the situation and really relish the fact that she's the opposite. Just a little anecdote is, we'll talk about this another time, but we went, you know, 2020 has been tough for a lot of people, and there was one real acute, stressful incident throughout this past year, where actually I was really worried for Terry Lynn's life. And for about 25 minutes, I actually wasn't sure if I'd lose her or not. And this kind of touched on a lot of things from my childhood. I had to watch my father get taken away into an ambulance many times. He's alive and fine. But it touched on a lot of sensitive nerves. And for about 20-25 minutes, there was this acute trauma in my mind. And it's cute because, you know, your first 6 months of marriage, your first year of marriage can have lots of, you know, back and forth frustrations as you learn to deal with someone who often is the opposite of you in so many ways. But for 20-25 minutes, there is nothing she could do wrong. I was enraptured with her. Every little thing, every little annoying tick I just saw through with hearts and rose-colored glasses, and for 25 minutes she could do no wrong.
I can do no wrong.
And then as soon as I found out she was gonna be okay, she was gonna be fine, you know, suddenly I remembered all those things about her that drive me nuts. And you know, since then they're always in front of me, all those things. But the truth is, at the end of the day, I'm married to someone the opposite me, and I can, if I ever, you know, those moments when I'm frustrated, you know, right before bed, and, you know, something comes up, I think back to those 20-25 minutes, and I think, you know, when it really comes down to it, I know I love her more than I've loved any other human, and I'm just so eternally grateful and thankful for her. She's the most beautiful girl in the world.
You know, that kind of also reminds me of another thing we've learned.
Yeah.
And that is, before we got married, I remember when we were dating, and we said to each other, you know, I don't see how I could love you anymore. Like, I love you so much that there's no room left to love you anymore. Like, I love you that much. And that is something that we've learned that's not true. In marriage, we have learned that we love each other more and more every day. And, like, the more I learn about Derek, the more I fall in love with him. And, you know, so it's really cool that, you know, like he said, when we annoy each other, like, and he can be annoying, and so can I can be annoying. Yes. But in those moments, I love him so much. And so, you know, even when there is a little argument, I know in that entire time, I'm thinking literally, even though sometimes I'm like, oh, you're really getting on my nerves, in my head and in my heart, I am saying, I love you so much. And so having that assurance and peace that someone loves you and that you love someone unconditionally is an incredible peace. Yeah. And it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. I think that's, you know, that kind of sums it up.
I have one more.
Oh, I had one more too, but do we have time? Go.
Okay. So my final one for me is that, okay, this is something, again, that you are told your entire life, and then when you get married, is that communication is key. And I am here to say that is true. That is so true. Communication, being real, transparent, telling each other everything. So everything that's on your heart, everything that's on your mind, not leaving anything out.
I think each couple learns the rhythms of what that looks like, though. So I think, like, it's not like, you know, if you're really frustrated and you're annoyed with them that day, you don't tell them that necessarily.
Yeah, no. That's
but,
what
like,
I'm saying.
so it's learning and that's something, again, that only honestly time living together will teach you, is learning the rhythms of transparency and the dance of trust and understand, you know, being vulnerable. And I think that's kind of what it boils down to, is being, almost learning to be vulnerable and to communicate in a safe way, but also in an honest way.
But communication is so important. And that is something that we have learned in the past year.
But cut yourself slack. You know, those first 6 weeks or even 6 months are not a good way of knowing what it's going to be, because you learn time. Time, really.
Like, we are still learning.
Just hang on.
And I'm sure, like, we'll be like 20 years into marriage, and we will still be learning.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 in 20 years.
Come back then.
We'll look a little different.
I hope not.
No, we're still gonna look good. Okay. You're gonna look good.
Okay, so do you have one more?
It kind of just tied into the don't go to bed angry thing. A biggest thing is in an argument, especially for certain personality types, it kind of ties into the, you know, we have to finish this now. Don't be afraid to take a few minutes to cool down, especially certain personality types. It's so easy to get caught up in this spiral of you know, just getting your voice heard. And it's so easy, you know, it's almost like two people, you know, jousting, like you're each trying to get your point across and nobody's hearing the either person. So the best thing you can do is kind of both take a step back, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and honestly that whole cooling down thing, and just letting logic interrupt that downward spiral. And so you can finally realize, okay, we're just trying to shout each other down, not literally. Listen, we're really friends. No, we're not trying to shout each other down. We're just not hearing each other because we're so concerned with ourselves being heard, and that's human nature. That's I want to be heard. I want my grievance to be heard. And so learning that it's, you know, the biggest thing that interrupts that, oh, they're not listening. I'm the one being hurt, is honestly just taking a step back and remembering that, you know, that thing you love about them, or, you know, those moments, that everything they did, you know, Sean. But anyways, that's all I got.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
Well, that's all we have, folks. We have obviously learned a whole lot more, but that is just a few things to sum it up. So in our first year and 7 months of marriage, those are just a few things that we have learned. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please like if you did, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.